The oppressive silence of a hospital can be revealing, especially when it conceals a mystery as deep as the disappearance of a child in the 1960s, a time marked by great change and uncertainty in Brazil, where the healthcare infrastructure was fragile and bureaucracy often inefficient. Clara's story unfolded, leaving an indelible mark on her family's memory, and an enigma that would echo for an entire decade. Clara, a 5-year-old girl with curious eyes and an easy smile, brought joy to the lives of her parents, Ana and Roberto. On what seemed to be an ordinary day, persistent abdominal pain led her to the hospital, a typical public institution of that era, with long corridors and the characteristic smell of antiseptic, where hope and despair intertwined with every hospital bed. The parents, anxious yet confident that Clara would receive the care she needed, left her momentarily to handle paperwork at the front desk. That brief interval became an eternal wait, for when they returned to the room, Clara's bed was empty. Her stuffed teddy bear lay there, lonely and forgotten, on the wrinkled sheet, a silent symbol of a presence that had vanished. Panic gripped the parents, and Anna's previously calm voice became a distressed cry that echoed through the hospital halls, drawing the attention of everyone nearby. Soon, the nurses and doctors were loaded, and a search began, intense at first, but fruitless. Clara was nowhere to be found in the hospital, and a sense of loss, confusion, and unease began to settle like a foreboding omen. What initially seemed like a simple case of a child wandering off quickly turned into a nightmare. In the 1960s, child disappearances, especially in places like hospitals, were rarely discussed and often ignored by the authorities. The lack of clear protocols and the disorganized administration of hospitals at the time made it easy for cases like Clara's to become true mysteries. With every passing minute, the parents' hope dwindled, giving way to growing anguish. The image of the lonely teddy bear on the bed would remain the last tangible memory of Clara for a long time. News of her disappearance spread quickly, first through the hospital, and then through the small community where the family lived. The police were called, but the initial investigations were hampered by inexperience and lack of resources. Testimonies from hospital staff were vague and contradictory. Some claimed to have seen Clara playing in the corridors, while others said she was asleep when the parents left. No one seemed to have a clear explanation for the girl's disappearance. The inefficiency of the investigation only deepened Ana and Roberto's despair, as they found themselves trapped in a maze of doubt and uncertainty. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and Clara remained missing. The family's home, once full of laughter and play, became a sanctuary of silence and sorrow. Ana, once a vibrant woman, withered with each passing day, haunted by the image of the empty bed and abandoned bear. Roberto, in turn, plunged into an obsessive search, posting flyers with Clara's face across the city, visiting orphanages and police stations, always hoping for a clue, a sign of life. The community, initially supportive, began to distance itself, unable to cope with the family's persistent grief. Whispers and speculations emerged. Some blamed the parents for negligence, while others suggested darker theories, such as kidnapping or child trafficking, topics that, though present at the time, were rarely discussed openly. With each false lead, with every door that closed, hope diminished, but Roberto's determination remained unshakable. He became a well-known figure in the city, the man who never gave up on his daughter. The police, however, filed the case away as a disappearance without trace, a cold phrase that sealed Clara's fate in official records. But to Ana and Roberto, Clara was never just a file. She was the daughter they loved, the little girl who vanished in the blink of an eye, leaving behind a void no words could ever fill. With each of Clara's birthdays, every Christmas, the pain returned, and the question, "Where is Clara?" echoed in their minds, unanswered. The tension grew, not only because of the girl's absence, but due to the feeling that something far bigger and more sinister lay behind her disappearance, something the surface of the police investigation couldn't even begin to scratch. The teddy bear, kept like a relic, was the only silent witness to a mystery that deepened with each passing year. The years dragged on, heavy and slow, like a funeral march that played incessantly in Ana and Roberto's lives. Clara's absence wasn't just a void, it was a constant presence, a shadow that hung over every meal, every conversation, every moment of silence. The image of the teddy bear alone in the bed remained a painful symbol of loss and the mystery surrounding Clara. The house, once a vibrant home, became a mausoleum of memories where every object of Clara's, a tiny shoe, a scribbled drawing, a storybook, was a painful reminder of what had been lost. Anna, a once lively woman, withered day by day. Her eyes, once bright, now dull and distant, lost in a grief that seemed to have no end. She clung to any thread of hope, no matter how thin, visiting psychics and charlatans in a vain attempt to find a clue, a sign of her daughter. Roberto, on the other hand, channeled his pain into obsession. He became an amateur detective, revisiting the hospital countless times, questioning former and current staff, digging through dusty archives for any inconsistency or overlooked detail. He delved deep into the hospital's chaotic bureaucracy, uncovering a mess of incomplete records, lost medical files, and a shocking lack of control over patient and visitor movement. It was as if the hospital itself, in its chaotic structure, had become the silent accomplice in Clara's disappearance. With each new discovery, no matter how small, the tension grew. Roberto found a former janitor who, under the promise of anonymity, revealed having seen an unknown woman lurking around Clara's room in the days before her disappearance. The description was vague, a middle-aged woman with a headscarf and a furtive look, but it was the first concrete lead in years. The police, once informed, were skeptical, attributing the janitor's memory to the passage of time and the stress of the situation. But for Roberto, it was a spark, a small flame in the darkness. His search led him to dead ends, but every step he took was an attempt to bring Clara back, a hope that refused to die. The emotional and financial toll led Roberto down paths of false hope and nearly destroyed what was left of his family. Anna and Roberto's marriage, once a pillar of strength, began to crumble under the weight of tragedy and exhaustion. Each year that passed, society seemed to forget Clara, but her parents couldn't. On each anniversary of her disappearance, they held a small vigil, lighting candles and praying for a miracle. The tension stemmed not only from absence, but from uncertainty, from the sense that the truth was there, hidden somewhere, waiting to be unearthed. As the 10th anniversary of Clara's disappearance approached, a strange sense of foreboding began to hover over the family, as if time itself were finally ready to reveal its darkest secrets. 10 years of silence, pain, and relentless searching came to an end not as a day of mourning, but as a catalyst for the truth. Roberto, exhausted but driven by near-mad persistence, followed the janitor's lead. He spent months visiting hospitals and nursing homes in the region, showing a faded photo of Clara, hoping someone would recognize the woman with the scarf. In a modest nursing home on the outskirts of the city, luck or fate finally smiled upon him. An elderly nurse, with tired eyes but a sharp memory, recognized the description. She remembered a patient who had been admitted to the same hospital as Clara around the same time. A mentally ill woman who had lost a newborn and in her delusions believed all children were hers. Her name was Elsa. The nurse recalled that Elsa had been discharged shortly after Clara's disappearance, and no one knew where she had gone. The final piece of the puzzle was there, waiting to fall into place. Roberto, his heart pounding erratically, went to the police once again, now armed with all the information he had gathered. This time, his persistence and a new lead were enough to reopen the case. The investigation led the officers to a small, isolated house in a rural area, dozens of miles from the hospital. The modest home, nearly swallowed by vegetation, seemed frozen in time. Upon entering, the smell of mold and abandonment was almost tangible. In one of the rooms, they found the revelation. There sat a 15-year-old girl, not the 5-year-old Clara who had vanished, but a thin, pale teenager, with the same curious eyes and faded blonde hair. She was sitting in a corner, clutching an old, worn-out teddy bear, the very same one Clara had been holding on the day she disappeared. Beside her sat an elderly woman with a headscarf and a distant gaze, the same woman described by the hospital janitor, Elsa. The truth was terrible in its simplicity. Elsa, in a state of delusion, had seen Clara at the hospital, and in her disturbed mind, mistook her for the son she had lost. She took Clara home and raised her as her own daughter, in an isolated world warped by mental illness. Deprived of contact with the outside world, Clara grew up not knowing who she truly was, without any memory of her biological parents or the life that had been stolen from her. The emotional impact of the discovery was overwhelming. Anna and Roberto, upon seeing their daughter after so many years, were overtaken by a mixture of relief, joy, and deep sorrow for Clara's stolen childhood. The reunion was a moment of conflicting emotions, marked by the strangeness of a daughter who didn't recognize them, and parents who saw a stranger in place of the little girl they had lost. The revelation didn't bring a happy ending, but rather a new beginning, one full of challenges and the need to rebuild bonds that should never have been broken. Clara's story was not just a missing person case. It was a testament to the fragility of the human mind, the negligence of a broken system, and the unshakable power of a family's love. Clara's reintegration into her biological family was a long and painful process, full of challenges and emotional complexity that was hard to grasp. The 5-year-old girl who had vanished had become a 15-year-old shaped by a distorted reality, where Elsa was her only maternal figure. The blood ties were undeniable, but the emotional bonds had to be rebuilt from scratch, with patience, love, and lots of therapy. Anna and Roberto, who had spent a decade searching for their daughter, now faced the challenge of getting to know her all over again, of peeling back the layers of a life that had been stolen from them. Clara, in turn, was caught between two worlds, the isolated, silent one with Elsa, where reality was fluid and the rules were dictated by a broken mind, and the vibrant, overwhelming world of her biological parents, filled with love, but also a tidal wave of information and emotions she didn't know how to process. The teddy bear, once a symbol of her lost childhood, became a link to the past, a source of comfort amid the turbulence of her new life. Clara's story, however, does not end with a Hollywood happily ever after. It is a dark reminder of life's fragility, the importance of vigilance, and the devastating consequences of neglect. Clara's case exposed the failures of a crumbling healthcare system and the urgent need for stricter safety protocols, especially when it comes to children. But above all, Clara's story is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the unwavering strength of familial love. What happened to Clara makes us ask, how can we ensure that such tragedies never happen again? And how far are we willing to go to protect those we love the most? How many other children, in hospitals or other settings, have disappeared without a trace, their stories lost in time and bureaucracy? How many families are still searching for answers, living in the shadow of an unresolved mystery? The truth behind Clara's disappearance was harrowing, but its discovery brought a different kind of pain, the pain of a stolen childhood and the struggle to reclaim lost time. Thus, Clara's story endures, not as a fairy tale, but as an echo, a whisper in the wind, reminding us that sometimes the greatest revelations come hand in hand with the deepest scars. She symbolizes the vulnerability of lives that can be swallowed by failing systems, and the ongoing need for reform and vigilance to prevent such tragedies from happening again. Clara and her journey are a reminder that even when the truth comes to light, it can carry an emotional weight that challenges a family's ability to heal and reconnect.